Weather is one of those mechanics most DMs either ignore completely or overcomplicate until it's not worth the effort. I used to think it wasn't worth touching at all. Just extra bookkeeping for no real payoff. But after pushing myself to question that assumption, I realized something. Weather isn't about realism. It's about memory. Let me explain. In my last DM mechanics video, where I broke down my approach to XP and D&D 5e, the reactions were split. Some loved it, some swore by milestone, some offered other systems they prefer. That's fine. I'm not here to replace your system, I'm here to show you mine. In this video, I'll show you a simple way to use weather and travel to make your world feel alive without doubling your prep or bogging down your table. All right, so let's just get into it. My weather system is made for a current campaign I'm running with my players. It is set in the Forgotten Realms, and it is revolving around the adventure of the Dragon of Icespire Peak. Now, the thing that's interesting about this adventure is they don't mention anything about weather anywhere in it, but everything around the adventure implies some sort of extreme cold. We're dealing with an ice dragon that comes in, and I've also set this up at the same time as they're finishing the Lost Mines adventure. So as Venomfang in the Lost Mines adventure goes down or flees or whatever happens to him, a new dragon replaces him in this region. And so I thought it was appropriate to match that with a weather system that was magical to the presence of this dragon. Cryovane? I think it's Cryovane. So I came up with 3 ways to do that. I did take this inspiration from the DMG. The DMG actually has a great example of it, of how to do weather in general. I just thought we needed something a little bit more magical, a little bit more extreme, and a little bit more structured on rules. But the inspiration did start from there. So you have temperature, and you could have normal, warm, or extreme cold. You also have nighttime. That's an interesting thing, is the time of day matters, because obviously for wintertime, with this situation, nighttime, no matter what it happened during the daytime, it is extreme cold at nighttime. Then you have wind. You could have none, light wind, or strong wind. The wind has effects, just like the cold has effects. Then you have precipitation, none, light precipitation, and heavy precipitation. Now with each of these little tables, only the last one had any mechanical effect. And so the aim I was trying to achieve with this result was that the first one would just be a lovely day or a better day in the middle of winter. The second result would be a little bit more of a flavor effect, but not a mechanical effect. And then the third result would be an extreme effect that had some sort of mechanical consequences to it that added to the story. On top of that, I showed ways to mitigate the weather conditions. I didn't want my players to feel stuck or forced into it. And so if they ever did get trapped in bad weather, or if they ever did have to travel through the bad weather, I wanted them to have ways to try to work around it with flexibility built into that. For my system, I think one other thing that's important to note is that I am doing the old school exhaustion rules. So instead of 1 through 6 levels of exhaustion, it's 1 through 10, but there are no other modifiers to the exhaustion besides -1, -2, -3, and so on all the way to 10, 10 being death. And so my levels of exhaustion are bigger and less impactful to the game than the quicker exponential ones that happen with 5e's rules. To me, the importance of weather is to tell a story. For this system, for this example with my campaign, I want the players to feel like the dragon isn't just a happenstance, isn't just a monster to slay, but a presence in the region that gives them believability. Even without seeing him, you see the effects of his presence being there. You see the effects on the townsfolk of the frontier town of Fandalen being there. I wanted the dragon's aura to just show itself throughout the entire campaign, in that way telling a story. So the other thing I wanted to point out was that there is the importance of the land having things to explore in it. And I'll explain what I mean. There are 2 concepts I have for doing this. One is making the land and placing the things when, how, and how much that they show up. For me, I have made other maps that aren't tied to modules where I create my own thing, and I've created a hex crawl system for that as well, where I go through the process of building the map in a way where it just tells a story on its own, because it places things in there, sometimes minor features, sometimes major features, sometimes roads, water, or settlements near water or roads, factions, and then you can tie the story in from there. The other approach for longer journeys that I'm currently doing in another campaign where me and my fiance are trying to make it from Fandalen down to Candlekeep, is we are doing legs of the journey, because there's many cities to get to from where we are in Fandalen all the way to Candlekeep. And so I've created this idea of legs, whereas the stopping points, the cities, the towns, are gonna have their own things going on anyway. They're gonna have exploration going on within them, but to try to explain the journey through it, each in between will have a leg that's composed of a combat or a story encounter, a complication, and a flavor to the scene and to paint where we are. And so those are my main two approaches to traveling and how you look at it in that sense. Another simple tip that I think is important for the DM early on is deciding what can and can't be done while traveling. With Fandalen itself, when I'm zoomed in, it's easier to say, well, you have this many hours of travel before you have to long rest. Or every time you long rest, we need to mark off a food here and make sure we note it. Versus the longer form of travel where it's more zoomed out. And I think it would be assumed that after each fight, the party would get to long rest. And so I'm not calculating that as much, or short rests for that matter. And so because of that, the further zoomed out you are, the less the story would be focused on the day-to-day. Whereas when you're more zoomed in, the details like rations, rests, hour to hour matter a lot more. This system isn't meant to force weather into your campaign. It's for DMs who already want travel to matter, but don't want to overcommit to charts, tracking, and busy work. If this helped you rethink how your world feels between destinations, let me know in the comments. Do you use weather at your table? Or do you skip it entirely? And if you enjoy challenging default assumptions in DMing, check out my XP breakdown video next. I'll see you in the next one.